and authority, all rule and authority, because he is the God-man. All the fullness of deity dwells in him in bodily form, and he made all things, whether in heaven and earth. You can't get any more powerful than that. Amen. So where's the focus so far? Is it on anything other than Christ? No. It is on him. And so on what basis would we look at verse 11 and go, yeah, that was all great, and he's going to jump right back to that later on. But at this point, there's a huge change, big shift in topic. And in him, you were also circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, in the removal of the body of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ. Now there is a tough sentence. That's a tough sentence. It's not that it's necessarily super tough in Greek. There are a few you certainly have a guiding verb, and then you have some participles, and yeah, there's some phraseology there. But does it really change the focus? Because notice, in him, you were also circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, and removal of the body of the flesh, by the circumcision of Christ. So the first thing to notice is this is something Christ does. Now, some people might go, well, so I've jumped to the end of the verse because I'm looking at by the circumcision of Christ. And there's different ways of the people have understood that. But it seems obvious to me that this is something that Christ accomplishes for those who are in him. Now, what is the circumcision of Christ? Well, what was the description of above? You were also circumcised with a circumcision made without hands. Immediately we see this is not talking about the old covenant sign, because there is one thing that is absolutely certain. Every single circumcision under the old covenant was done by hands. It was a fleshly act. It was something that the rabbi did at a certain time and in a certain way. It had become very, very ritualized, obviously, by the time of the days of Jesus. And so the first thing you have to see is this is a circumcision made without hands. So it's not fleshly. And he's addressing all the saints in Colossae, the mixed crowd of men and women. And so in him, so who is in him? Well, Ephesians, Colossians, these are the elect of God. In him, in Christ, you experienced something. It was a circumcision made without hands, and then it's described in what's called apposition. This is how you describe something by restating it and redefining it. Well, what is it? It's the removal of the body of flesh. Removal of the body of flesh. Now, what in the world is Paul referring to? Well, when he talks about this, when he talks about how we have died and risen with Christ, when he talks about what we have died to, he's talking about that old man, that old nature, that old flesh. He's going to continue this on in chapter 3, and he's talk about that renewal that we all experience, male, female, Jew, Greek, Scythian, barbarian, slave, free. All of us are experiencing this renewal by the Spirit of God. And so what is it to have the removal of the body of flesh? This is Paul's describing for us, and this is just one way he describes it, the beautiful reality of regeneration. Being made spiritually alive, no longer that heart of stone, but giving the heart of flesh, the one that's really beating and really alive. That whole old nature, that body of flesh in which dwells the old ways, is no longer in control. What